All right, hey, how you doing? So we're back on looking at the TDD for our serverless function, and I want to move on to showing how we can run some functional tests on this. But in the meantime, I thought what I'd do is I'd just quickly run through and finish up writing some of these tests. And also I'll explain what I'm doing whilst I'm going. I think the key thing with this is that programming isn't necessarily an exact science. From the perspective of when you're doing it, you think you have a good idea, and more often than not, you end up changing it. So one of the good things about having tests is that it gives you the confidence to change and to know that what you've changed isn't going to have some unintentional consequences. Okay, so we're back on this test here, and one of the things that we started to do yesterday was we started to write this test. So test facebox check with error returns error, and that's going to test lines 34 through 37 over there on the actual implementation. So we've already got our mock, and we've already got our dependencies set up, so we can start to go in and write a test for this. So I'm just going to copy some of this and paste that down here. Now, I'm going, instead of just checking these calls, what I want to do is I want to check for an error. So in my output, I'm going to have my out. That's going to be the return from the handle function. And what I want to test is I want to test that I'm getting error getting faces with the error message. So let's just add that there now. Now, with error messages, it's probably a better idea to put these in as constants. If I put them in as constants, I can save myself a little bit of trouble. So let's go and do that now. So we're going to have const, and we're going to call this get faces error, and it's basically going to be this value here. All right, so then rather than having that text in there, I can just say get faces error. Now, over on this side, what I want to do is I want to check that it's equal. So I can say that I'm looking for an equal, and it should be equal to get faces error plus the error that I pass in. So if I just do sprintf get faces error, which I've defined as a constant, and my error. And then what I'm going to test is that my output is equal to that error message. So then we can change this message here, and we're going to say output error should have been by the handler. Now, we need to force the check faces, the check method, to return an error in order for this to sort of be successful. So what I can do is I've already got my mock here. Now I've hard-coded this to return no faces and an error of nil. So in my setup, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another thing, which is faces error. And that's going to be of type error with only 2 R's. and then I can return faces error there. Now, then what I can do is I can start setting up these tests like this. So let me define my error, and I'm going to say format.errorf, and we're just going to say boom. And then I can pass that error in there. And now what's going to happen is when this check function here is run in my second test, I'm going to get this block evaluated, and it's going to return me this faces error. So I'm not actually using my mock, and my dog's barking, so I apologize. So I can get rid of that in this particular instance. And then we should be able to run that, and this test should pass. So let's have a quick run of that test. Okay, excellent, and everything passes. Again, if I change that to nil, just to kind of prove to you what's going on in here, we'll see that testing fail. Okay, cool. Right. So now what we've got is we've got some tests which cover these lines here. The next thing we want to test is this block here. So we're decoding an image, and if we can't decode an image, then again we need to return an error. So this is a little bit more complex because image is actually a package. Decode is a function on the package. So in the same way that I was kind of running dependencies where I'm passing in an interface, it's a lot more complicated with this, this image decode method. So there's two ways that I can do it. One is I could write my own abstraction around image decode. So I could create my own interface and my own sort of implementation. But then I actually need to check and test that implementation is doing the right thing. The other thing I could do is I could just write a little bit of a dirty hack. Well, not so much a dirty hack, but I could have a function, and the function I can pass as a dependency. So rather than calling image.decode, I'm calling a function which I've passed in through my deps. But again, I need to test the actual concrete implementation of that function to make sure that I have got the implementation correct. So in this instance, I'm going to take a short route. So I'm actually just going to throw images decode a real PNG. Now there's pros and cons to doing this. The pro is that it's a quick way to implement in your test. The con is that images.decode will be slower than running a pure unit test against a stub. But for the time being, I'm going to check out. I don't think it's going to be that slow. I can create a couple of mock images, one which is valid and one which isn't. So I'm just going to give that a go. That's the quickest route right now. I might refactor that out into some sort of a nicer, more testable package at a later date if I need to do so. Okay, so first things first. So we're going to say func test image test, sorry, no, test when image decode turns error returns error. Okay, so we can force image decode to return an error because actually what we're doing is we're decoding from the slice of bytes that's passed in the handle. And as you can see by line 64 here, this is not a valid image. So I expect this to throw an error. So again, in the same way that I added my constant for get faces, I'm going to add a constant for my error message for decoding an image. So I'm just going to call this decode image error, and oops, and let's just copy this. Damn it, if I could remember to type, which I can't. So decode image error. Okay. Save this. Oh, I'm missing a bracket. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to check that decode image error and error and output. Now, this is going to be slightly different because I'm not sort of mocking out images.decode. I don't necessarily know what error this thing's going to return. So I can take some shortcuts, make some assumptions, and that might be good enough right now, but let's run this, and this test here should fail. I'm just going to delete this because we don't need that. And there you go, it does. And it fails because error decoding image is unknown format. So that's the error that we have. So how do we get around this? So there's a number of things that we could potentially do. Well, I think it's fairly predictable that this is going to be our error message from our function. So again, just as a short term, let's just try to continue making progress, and we can just sort of okay, so sorry, image unknown format. Now, one of the other things that we could do, actually, because Go is generally pretty decent about this, I wonder if there's a constant already in the images package. So let's have a quick look at that. Let's have a look. Let's see if the error constants are defined in here. I know they are for a lot of the OS. There we go. So error format indicates decoding. Come on, Go, be nice to me. Define these as constants. Let's have a look over here. Error format. Oh, okay, sorry, there it is there. It's a variable. Blah, blah, blah. So what we can probably do now then, rather than have this string here, is we can just replace this with image.error format. And now let's run our test. And everything passes. So that's quite a nice way to kind of do something quick and easy. As I said, it's not ideal because we're actually running the test through images.decode, but in this instance it's certainly not slow, and what we can do later on is we can just replace that out with a package. So now in terms of our tests, we're good right the way down to here. So the next step is we need to start looking at drawing our faces and checking that the faces are being drawn. Now before that, we do have this element here, which is copying our image to a new RGBA image, and then it's drawing it. Again, we're kind of back in the layers of the previous test, where we sort of need to abstract this out of our function to be able to test that we're doing it okay. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a shortcut and I'm going to ignore this for the time being, because actually when I get on to writing the functional test, hopefully in the next part of this session, I'm going to get coverage there anyway, because we will be able to validate that with a functional test. So let's have a quick look at this graphic context. So again, we've got new graphic context based on an image. We then set the stroke color, the fill color, and the line width. So we want to test that we're setting these values. So what we need to do again is we need to go and build an interface for our drawing, our drawable interface, or whatever we decide to call it. And then we can add these lines, move to, line to, close, fill, stroke, etc. But one of the sort of the problems is we have this new graphic context, and graphic context, which is this draw 2D graphic context, is returned again from a package level function. So this makes it difficult to mock it out. Unless, of course, we do what we sort of suggested that we could potentially do with the image, which is we write in a function in our dependencies. So let's have a quick think about that. That's probably going to be the only way we can do that, where unless we remove that hard dependency, we're not going to be able to test GC. And I mean, that's slightly different from image, but it is a very similar problem. So we're going to have to go ahead and do that, I think. All right, so our dependencies. Our dependencies now also need a function. So our function, which is create graphics context. So I'm going to have a type. It's going to be called graphic it's going to be a graphic context creator. It's going to be a type function. It's going to take I think it's, let's have a look at the signature on new graphic context. So draw.image. And it's going to return a draw2d dot, a reference draw 2D dot. I think that is correct. Doesn't seem to be complaining too much. Right, now what I want to do is I don't actually want to return a concrete graphic context here. I need to return my own interface. So let's create our own interface for the graphic context. So we're going to do type. It's going to be, I'm just going to call it drawable. It's an interface. And we need to add some of the methods that we're going to use on our on our concrete graphic context that we've got from line 60 downwards. So the first one we're going to do is set stroke color. So we can add a method, set stroke color, and that's going to take color.color. We're going to add set fill color. Again, we're going to add set line width. And then, oh sorry, line width is not a color. It is, I'm guessing, a float 64, which I think. And my dog is desperate to get into the room, so I'm going to let her in. Little pest. And let's have a look at the signature here. So we've got go, move to, and line to. Let's just copy these. And add those to our drawable. Now I was being overly lazy, which hasn't actually saved me any time whatsoever. Anyway, I don't quite know why I've got some dodgy Vim mapping going on, I think. And lastly, what do we need? We need close and we need fill stroke. So now what we've done is we've created an interface from the concrete graphics context, and that's going to allow us to do our mocks in the same way as we did with the Facebox checker. So let's give it a comment, drawable defines an interface for a drawing canvas. That seems sensible enough for now. I might go back and change that at some point. So then my graphic context creator, rather than that returning an actual graphics context creator, what it's going to do is I'm going to return drawable. So now in my dependencies function, what I can do is I can return my Facebox checker. I'm also going to return drawable because I want to have my graphics context creator, and I can set that up. So I can set up something like this. I'm going to return draw 2D image dot new graphic context. Oh. Okay, cool. So now I've updated my dependencies. Not only am I getting my Facebox client, but I'm also getting my graphics context creator. I've got no idea what to call this for the moment, so I'm just going to call it graph creator. And then rather than having GC equals draw2D graphics context, what I can do is, I should probably just call this new graphics context actually. Okay, so next thing I need to do is I just need to create my mock for my drawable interface. And again, I'm using mock, so I can just quickly use that. This is going to be drawable. I'm going to put this as drawable mock.test, save that out into that file. And let's go generate our